We're at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center talking to Marvin Harrison Jr. prior to him departing for New York for the Heisman Trophy ceremony, where he's one of the 4 finalists. And obviously one of the first questions he got today was, are you playing in the Cotton Bowl? And more than that, are you coming back to Ohio State next season? Are you ready to declare that you're going to the NFL draft where you're expected to be maybe the first person taken, certainly one of the first few people off of the board, and very likely the first receiver taken? And that's been the expectation since last season. And he says he's still undecided on both fronts, but listed a lot of reasons why he's compelled to maybe come back, and they're all things that have to do with not finishing things the way he wanted to this season. So, Steven, we're gonna be his advisors. Should Marvin Harrison Jr. be thinking about coming back to Ohio State next season?
No. Just no. I understand NIL exists. So there is a facet of people who have a decision like this to make where the financial part of it is basically similar. So maybe you can come back and raise your draft stock. Marvin Harrison Jr.'s draft stock isn't getting any higher. He might be the first pick in the draft depending on who ends up with the number 1 pick, but he's definitely going to be at least maybe the first non-quarterback taken in this draft as well. He's the guy in this. He's the most surefire prospect in this draft, according to a lot of people who talk about this stuff more than I do. No, he shouldn't come back. But I understand why he's taking his time with it. And that's the thing I wanted to get at when I asked him about how C.J. Stroud did the same thing. And he listed off a bunch of reasons, the Michigan, all that stuff. But then I had another conversation about it because I just wanted to make sure he understood what I was saying. Because from our point of view, it does seem like a no-brainer. But there is part of this that is just simply, you love the people in this building, man. And you want to spend as much time around these people that you've gotten to grow and love since you were 16 years old. And so there's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason for him to rush that decision right now because it's not going to get him drafted tomorrow. So I understand why he's taking his time actually announcing the decision. But should he do it? No. Go pro, Marvin. And I know you're watching because you're on our YouTube channel now. Go pro.
Andrew, I think I know how you're going to answer this, but I'm going to go ahead and let you answer it. Should Marvin Harrison Jr. put aside these very compelling, emotional things? He wants to beat Michigan. He wants to win a Big Ten championship. He wants to play for a Big Ten championship in Lucas Oil Stadium, assuming that's where they play that again next year, because that's where his dad was a Hall of Fame superstar player for a long time, and he has memories of that, I'm sure, or at least later in his life of going back there. Should those override the financial realities of being one of the first people off the board in the NFL draft?
Well, I'm disappointed you didn't ask if you thought we could enter the transfer portal, because that's also an option too, I guess, theoretically, right? No, it's not. Marvin Harrison Jr. should go pro. Marvin Harrison Jr. should go pro, and I've mentioned this a couple of times. The first contract, it sounds hilarious to us and to people watching. Maybe to people watching, maybe you got a great bank account. But the money you make on your first deal in the NFL is one thing. He's going to make $15, $20 million on that first deal. Tyreek Hill makes $30 million a year right now. That is the level that Marvin Harrison Jr. should be aspiring to and thinks that he can get to, obviously. And this is going to be 4 or 5 years down the line. So what is that number going to be? Like, what is the Tyreek Hill contract down the line? $40 million a year? So the financial realities are one thing where you can make a competitive offer and you can have somebody stay for NIL reasons. But the reality of it is, Ohio State is not going to pay him $30 million a year, $40 million a year because they know that he can stay. Like, it's just the financial realities of this entire thing are, hey, it's great for you were mentioning the certain subset of guys maybe later in the draft who the money can be comparable and that maybe need another year to boost themselves. But with Marv, it's just the second contract is going to be so expensive and it's going to be so much. It's just going to be so much money if Marvin is everything that we think he can be and more. So I would tell him to go pro because, yeah, it's the emotional realities are one thing, but go talk to Marvin Harrison Jr., the 15-year-old, the 10-year-old, and I guarantee you one of his dreams would be to make it to the NFL. So I understand the emotional pull of, hey, I wanted to beat Michigan, I wanted to win the Big Ten, and those can be goals that he has had, but making the NFL has also been a goal for him for a very long time. So that's another thing that he's going to have to look past too. So you have to give up on one goal to start another goal.
So before I answer, I have one more question. Steven, I'm going to turn to you. You're more the expert on this. When we see Marvin Harrison Jr. at the Heisman events this weekend, if you had to guess top to bottom, head to toe, including the shoes, how much will his fit cost?
Ooh, that's a good question. I asked him that. Go check out that video, too. It's on our YouTube channel. I got a one-on-one with Marvin Harrison Jr. We talked about some fun stuff. And I tried to get some what's some preview on his suit. He didn't want to give anything away, but he said it's not something that people have never seen before. So I am going to say the over-under on Marvin Harrison Jr.'s suit is $250,000.
$250,000. That's insane. Well, if that's true, then it even proves what I'm about to talk about even more, which is there's one player that I think I've ever covered, certainly here at Ohio State, that when it comes down to this draft thing, this draft decision, money doesn't really matter to some extent, where you're coming from a place where, his family, his dad obviously put himself in a position where money hasn't been an object because of the success that he had in the NFL. And I even asked Marvin today, like, hey, in the past it was like emotion on this side, money on this side. Well, now you can have money on this side along with the emotion if you choose to have it, if you choose to get it through the NIL avenues. And there aren't very many players in the country that have more NIL potential from their brand than Marvin Harrison Jr. does. It's something he's already tapped into, although, again, because of this family's background, both in terms of the position they're in and their experience, they were pretty judicious about the things that they put their name on put his name on over the time, because it's not just his name. So that's why I think that I would probably still advise him to go, because the future is so uncertain. But it is more real to me. I think it's more real to me that he would come back than C.J. Stroud would come back for that reason. And we had to wait, like you said, Stephen, for a long time for the C.J. Stroud announcement last year, and it always seemed to us like, this doesn't make any sense. With Harrison, because Stroud was going to change his family's life when he was the number 2 overall pick. That's not true for Marvin. He has more options because of where he's been put in life. It's sometimes a little bit uncouth to talk about money. I understand. But he is in a different situation than any of the other Ohio State players who are third-year guys who have this early entry decision to make. And we think there are some that are very much contemplating coming back who we wouldn't have assumed that of coming into the year. But for Harrison, I just think the equation is different. So I would be less shocked if he came back than I would have been if Stroud had ultimately decided to come back last year. I'm not saying that the actual chances of it are more real. I would just be less shocked by it. We'll talk more about that in the next, however long it takes him to make a decision on Buckeye Talk. And whenever he does make a decision, the first place we'll go with it is 614-350-3315. Get the texts. That news will come to you first from cleveland.com.